Hello, my name is Melissa McMann, and I am the Kiwanis International Youth Protection Specialist. I'm going to be talking with you today about Kiwanis youth protection policies and procedures and how to put those policies into practice. First off, wanted to introduce myself. Here is a photo, as well as our Executive Director of Kiwanis Youth Programs, Michelle Studi Campbell. Why does youth protection matter? Kiwanis youth programs serve over 335,000 youth each year. Globally, 1 in 4 youth will suffer some type of abuse or maltreatment. This is a statistic from the World Health Organization. Also, 85% of child abuse victims never report their abuse, and it goes unreported. Abuse is usually at the hands of a known acquaintance and family member and not a stranger. More than 90% of abusers are people children know, love, and trust. How this translates into dollars? The World Health Organization also reports that globally, within the US, $7 trillion is lost due to violence against children each year. This is equivalent to 8% of the global GDP. Child abuse and maltreatment are now considered a critical health crisis by the Centers for Disease Control. The total lifetime economic burden resulting from new cases of fatal and non-fatal child maltreatment in the United States is approximately $124 billion. So our goals within Kiwanis International for Youth Protection are to protect, educate, and engage all Kiwanis members, youth and adult. We want to protect youth members from predators, empower and educate adult members with the best practices when working with youth, as well as providing youth with positive skills development tools designed to inspire and engage our future leaders to be their best. Here we have, as of June 15th, statistics on how many service leadership programs we currently have with Kiwanis, as well as those Kiwanis International sponsored SLPs, the number of advisors that we have within our membership database on record, as well as the Kiwanis advisors who have been background checked. And we'll talk about background checks as part of our policy in a few slides. Also, those Kiwanis advisors who have completed the annual review of the policies and procedures. We have 94% of the SLPs are sponsored by Kiwanis clubs. And we have 78% of clubs that have identified a Kiwanis advisor within our records, as well as 73% of those Kiwanis advisors who are on record have a background check. 61% of the total percent of the Kiwanis International sponsored SLPs with the background check that an advisor had completed. And then that number equals for annual training is 35%. I know this looks like a lot of numbers, but I wanted to give a breakdown of the North American districts, the data as of June 15th, 2020. So, and I actually broke down the number of SLP clubs per district, as well as the number for the Kiwanis club that then sponsors an SLP club, the advisor that we have on record, and then of that Kiwanis advisor, how many of those have been background checked through the Kiwanis International process, as well as those Kiwanis advisors who have completed annual training. Kiwanis Youth Protection ABCs. So in youth protection, we have identified three main components of our program. We have A, accessible high-quality training and resources, B, background checks, and C, culture of care. So what are the high-quality training resources that we're providing? We want to provide our Kiwanis advisors and anyone working with our youth members with the highest quality of training and resources and leading best practices. And we have gone into a partnership with a vendor to provide modules on youth protection. And based on whether your role is an advisor or a chaperone, there is a different number. But in policy, all of our SLP advisors are required to complete the advisor role of the Presidium Youth Protection Training modules. Once this is completed, it is good for 2 years. And SLP chaperones are required to complete the chaperone modules of the Youth Protection Training modules. And on the right-hand side is the learning portal, and you can see that there's a couple different video training modules that are listed there. And basically they're like 15-minute modules that you go through, and the topics are sensitive in that they are related to child abuse, sexual predatory, social media safety, abuse risk management for volunteers. And once you've completed those trainings, they're automatically updated into our system. You can complete and click on a certificate if you would like to keep that for your own records. All Kiwanis members who are working with youth must review the youth protection policies and procedures annually. If you'd like a copy to download, a PDF copy of the youth protection policies and procedures, you can go to kiwanis.org, youth protection. And this is a PDF screenshot of what it looks like. It's about 2 pages, and you can review that. You can also review, if you'd like to look at the full Kiwanis International Policies and Procedures, as number 432. Social media communication and best practices. The best bet is to connect via a club page, an account, and not connecting with an individual youth member. So it's best to not become friends on your personal page of Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat. It's better to use the club page and connecting with any of the youth members. Never initiate following, friending, liking with youth members, and treat all social posts and interactions as public facing. And do not post pictures of youth on your personal social media pages and emails. When you're emailing a youth member, follow the rule of 3. Always include parents, guardians, or another adult, whether that be the youth protection manager or the district risk officer, and do not engage on one-on-one emails and texts. Transportation best practices. Remember to have at least 3 people in a car when you're traveling with youth. Student members should also ride in the back seat or the back row of the vehicle. Make sure that you have approval required from the parents or guardians prior to transporting the youth to a convention or a retreat or some other type of club-sponsored activity. And also, most importantly, always follow the local school or local law policy related to transportation, meaning follow the speed limit. Youth protection policies and procedures. Medication. Medication is only allowed with written permission from a parent or guardian. Reporting guidelines. If a Kiwanian observes troubling behavior involving a youth at a Kiwanis event or becomes aware of a situation that is illegal or potentially unsafe for a young person at a Kiwanis event, the Kiwanian must immediately contact the appropriate personnel on site, whether that is a district administrator, whether that is an event coordinator, and also provide notification to law enforcement personnel as appropriate. If the Kiwanian becomes aware of the troubling behavior after the event, they must contact the leaders of the event, provide notification to law enforcement personnel as appropriate, or if it's on the school grounds, the school personnel, and all local, state, provincial, and federal laws regarding reporting must also be followed. Background checks. All Service Leadership Program Kiwana advisors must have a Kiwanis cleared background check. And this means that it would be through our vendor, Safe Hiring Solutions. Background checks have also been enhanced for chaperones and club advisors, the level of background checks. We also have a dedicated, myself, a compliance specialist, to better track and communicate compliance and identify opportunities for improvement, whether that is data reporting on a regular basis to our youth protection managers, monitoring compliance of all of our advisors who have a background check. Recently, in February of 2020, there were some policy updates approved by the Board of Trustees, and single-day events without an overnight stay. All Kiwanis advisors, this means club members and non-members, registered for or participating in any service leadership program event must have a clear criminal background check and have completed the youth protection training, the Presidium training that I mentioned earlier, and all other adults participating in single-day events must follow all the Kiwanis International Youth Protection policies and procedures, a copy of which should be provided before the start of the event. Overnight event. All adults, club members, and non-members registered for or staying overnight at any service leadership program event must have a clear criminal background check history, must have completed Kiwanis International Presidium Annual Youth Protection Training. However, parents and guardians of participating students who are not chaperones may attend the event for a maximum of one overnight stay without a criminal background check. And what this means is if a parent of a student who is receiving an award at district convention, a district key club convention, or international convention, and the parent is not planning on staying for the duration of the whole conference, and they just want to go see their child, attend the event, the luncheon, they are not required to have a criminal background check. Chaperones. Chaperones must be 21 years or older. All chaperones, club members and non-members, participating in any single day or overnight SLP-sponsored event must have a clear background check. They must have completed the youth protection training, the chaperone training I mentioned earlier through Presidium, must follow all applicable policies and procedures related to youth protection. A minimum of one adult per 10 students must be serving as a chaperone during the entirety of the event. And each overnight Kiwanis-sponsored youth event must have a minimum one chaperone per 10 students. And how this breaks down is that adult chaperones must include one adult male for each 10 youth males or part of, and one adult female for each 10 youth females or part of 10 youth females. Meaning Like if you have up to 8 or up to 6, there should at least be one adult female for each 10. But if it is 8 or 7, you should have at least one adult female or adult male possible. Adults may not share sleeping quarters with students unless it is their child or in a bunkhouse camp setting, like a retreat cabin type setting. Policy and practice, chaperone scenario. So here we have examples of how to apply the youth protection policy. So scenario 1, Casey is a 20-year-old former Key Club governor and now a Kiwanis member and wants to chaperone the decon weekend. Casey turns 21 on the last day of decon. Can Casey chaperone the decon? What do you do? Casey cannot be an overnight chaperone for decon. Casey could be invited to assist with the workshop or other pieces of the event. She could do registration, take names, to encourage participation, but she would not be considered a chaperone and would not be able to stay overnight. Your Key Club decon is coming up in just 5 days, and you have 50 chaperones. You are following best practices, and all chaperones must complete a background check. 45 have cleared, and 5 are pending. What do you do? The chaperone must pass the Kiwanis International background check. Give your volunteers a deadline of no less than 4 weeks prior to your event to ensure adequate time for background checks. It typically takes our Safe Hiring Solutions, our vendor for background checks, 2 to 3 weeks, and we've seen them as quickly as a day. It typically depends on we do a federal, state, and local check. And so depending on the access that they're able to get with a local county background check history, sometimes that determines the time on how quickly it turns around. If you are still short on chaperones, work with your district youth protection manager, Kiwanis Club members, or district leaders who have a clear background check, as well as faculty members for chaperones. Policy and practice social media scenario. Scenario 3. Pat is a new college graduate and a former Key Club youth leader. Pat is a member of the local Kiwanis Club and will be a Key Club advisor. Pat is also a communications and marketing professional. Pat is very enthusiastic about the new role. Pat friends the faculty and students in the club on Facebook. Pat posts photos of the first meeting on Facebook, Instagram, and even creates a new Key Club Snapchat filter. What do you do? It all depends. If Pat has the appropriate permissions and waivers from the school and guardians to post on Facebook or Snapchat and is using the club's page, then that is okay. If Pat is posting on their own pages, it is not okay. Policy and practice overnight event scenario. You have a big overnight trip with multiple Key Club chapters, 35 students, 19 females, 16 males, are staying overnight on this great trip. 3 days before the trip, you learn that in the past year, one of the students, Al, is now Alice and identifies as female. What do you do? How do you do the room assignments? How do you assign the chaperones? Procedure 434 within the Kiwanis International Policies and Procedures has guidelines for student accommodations at events. When planning events, and especially those with overnight lodging, Kiwanis organizers should be inclusive and make reasonable accommodations for the unique needs of each student participant. If the standard situation for an overnight event is shared rooms by gender, students must be allowed to access housing consistent with their self-determined gender identity. However, a student shall be assigned a room by biological sex if the student or parent or legal guardian so requests. A student or parent or legal guardian may suggest an alternative sleeping arrangement, such as single occupancy room, which should be honored whenever possible. However, students cannot be required to stay in single occupancy accommodations, nor those arrangements be made without the consent of the student or parent or legal guardian. Roommate disagreements should be addressed and resolved with the best interests of all parties in mind. If a disagreement cannot be reconciled, no student should be forced to reside with another student. Also, all students must be allowed to access restroom facilities consistent with their self-determined gender identity. Event organizers should choose facilities that can be adapted to accommodate requests in accordance with these guidelines. If a facility is unwilling to accept these guidelines for any reason, a different location should be considered. Volunteers have an obligation to maintain student privacy and cannot disclose or require disclosure of a student's sexual orientation, transgender, gender nonconforming identity, biological sex, religion, disability, medical condition, or other personal information to anyone, including other students or their parents, without the consent of the student. Our third component of youth protection is culture of care. Culture of care, our intent with this is to provide the resources for adults and youth, to provide positive youth development, adolescent behavioral health. So while students are participating in the Kiwanis clubs, the service leadership clubs, we want to provide an environment that is safe and that is nurturing. Recently, Kiwanis International launched a new dedicated youth protection helpline. This helpline, the 866-607-SAFE, is staffed 24 hours, 7 days a week by trained professionals with Presidium. Kiwanis service leadership members and adult members can report inappropriate behavior, abuse, or policy violations to this number. Calls will then be routed to our youth protection team to investigate and follow up. If you have any questions or inquiries or requests related to any of the youth protection guidelines, you can find more resources at kiwanis.org, youth protection, or background checks at kiwanis.org, email at youthprotection@kiwanis.org.